But perhaps take us right back to the beginning of when did the choppy waters start?
The choppy water, well, we've had two things really which have been choppy waters over the last few years. We had the earthquakes about 8 years ago, and that was a bit tricky for our church. We lost our buildings and we had people in the orange and red zone.
Tell us about your congregation and what it did to the ministry of Jesus, that earthquake.
Well, it's good that you're asking me the question now rather than at the time. At the time I would have had a different answer. It would have been questions about why, Lord, and what are you doing, and those sorts of things. It's tricky when you lose your buildings, and even more tricky when there was rezoning that had to happen in terms of housing of Christchurch, and the middle of Christchurch and the east of Christchurch was the worst affected. We're on the east, so we had 40 of our regular weekly attending families in what was called the orange or red zone. So they either had to relocate or there was a question to be asked about whether they had to relocate. So I'd been at St Stephen's about 5 years, I think, when that happened. What it's done, looking back now kind of 8 years later, is the Lord's done a wonderful thing for us in that He reminded us that it's not buildings that define us. I don't think I'd properly understood how easily the buildings can set your vision and agenda in terms of following the Lord and ministry and those kind of things. So we were reminded that it's the Lord Jesus that unites us. But we loved it. And I think this is common in Anglican church life. We're often deeply attached to the buildings. We've had profound spiritual experiences there. At St Stephen's, there are second and third generation St Stephen's people there for whom the building has been very significant. So even though it wasn't aesthetically what you might call pleasing to the eye or those kind of things, it was very meaningful.
Where did you go?
We had a process where for a month there was a local Lutheran church who very kindly opened their doors for us at 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. But where we ended up after about a month was a local intermediate school. And we went from having 3 services on a Sunday which all had their own identity and flavour, and we had to go from 3 into 1. The one thing I'm always very thankful for was our older parishioners, because they were the ones who'd lost the most. They had the most love for the buildings, the most love for their particular style of service. They missed the organ, suddenly there were drums, and they were the ones who stood up most clearly and said, it's about the Lord Jesus Christ, and as long as that's primary, we're okay.